Hey, welcome to Pretty Well. Do you want to get to the root causes of your health concerns? Do you find yourself Googling, why do I feel this way? And looking for solutions to feel great again? I'm Lisa Smith, and I too felt exhausted, achy, and like I was aging too quickly. I wanted to look and feel like myself again and spent way too much time and money going to practitioners, even functional medicine practitioners, and not getting results. So I became a functional medicine practitioner myself and learned how to identify and fix root causes to health issues. The good news is there is so much you can do to reclaim your wellness. In this podcast, you'll find quick, simple, and evidence-based guidance that you can easily fit into your day so your energy will be soaring, your mind clear, and your skin will return to its beautiful glow. Let's dive in. Let's go. Hey, welcome back to the Pretty Well podcast. I'm Lisa Smith, and today you are going to love our conversation. Today I'm talking with Dr. Jeff Crippen, and Dr. Jeff's passion is to live life to the fullest and to help others do the same. He's a chiropractor, certified traditional naturopath, and life force particle recovery coach with a passion for helping others unlock their true potential. Jeff enjoys seeing his clients win, improve their health, and live the life they want. Jeff teaches a course called Beyond Ozempic, a holistic approach to weight loss, optimizing body composition, and maximizing health, where he covers what your doctor isn't telling you about Ozempic and GLP-1s, as well as takes a deep dive on natural, healthy weight loss strategies and simple steps to jumpstart healthy weight habits. Jeff's course explores the science behind weight loss drugs like Ozempic and natural, sustainable solutions for long-term wellness. It helps course members know how to optimize health, manage weight, and make informed decisions. Welcome, Jeff.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be back on the show, Lisa.
It's great to have you back. It was about a year ago. And can I share a little bit about what you have going on that we were
Yes,
talking about?
yes, go right ahead.
So a year ago, I talked to Jeff, guys, and when we finished our recording, I said, so what do you have going on? And he said, well, I'm getting married this Saturday. That was a year ago. And I was like, you're getting married this Saturday? That's like huge. And so we talked about that. And today we were chatting before we came on the air, and we were saying, like, what's up with your life and what's up with your life? And Jeff, do you want to share? You've got just a couple things going on right
Yeah,
now.
yeah. So my wife and I are blessed enough to be moving in, building a house and moving in on our anniversary weekend. So we
Oh,
are doing that. And she is 23 weeks pregnant. So we get to welcome that next wonderful being into our family
yeah.
coming up in around August or September.
Yay. And you added a new dog to the mix because
And
why not?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we tried to get through the teething stage with the dog before the baby came. And so, yeah, just we'll throw it all in together and see what happens. But we're excited, busy, and blessed. It's kind of where I feel we are.
That's awesome. That's a great stage of life. And like I'd said to Jeff, guys, everyone who's a parent will understand. I was like, you're going into a crazy stage of life and you're going to be really tired sometimes. But honestly, like drink it in because when they move away, you just miss them a lot.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
anyhow, enjoy and congratulations. And so, guys, Jeff does many things, but I really wanted us to talk today about his course Beyond Ozempic. There's so much, there's so much wisdom here and clinical pearls that we're going to glean from Jeff that I really wanted us just to take the time to have the conversation about what is the course about and how can we help our listeners through this episode.
Mm.
And Jeff, I was sharing with you, one of my virtual clients has been working with the GLP-1 for several months now. We worked for months together, and due to some hormonal changes, she wasn't able to see the needle move. And not that there was a lot of weight she wanted to lose, but there was just this stubborn 25-ish, 30-ish pounds that just wouldn't budge. So, she and I have been working together to make sure that as she walks this journey, that we together are doing everything we can do to preserve muscle, to make sure she
Yeah.
has plenty of nutrition, that she's getting all the nutrients she needs, and is maintaining health and preserving health in the most mindful way possible. But you're going to bring so much wisdom and wealth of knowledge to this. So let's talk about that. What do you see? Let's first talk about what are the main mechanisms of how GLP-1 medications work. So how do they work in people's bodies? Because they're extremely effective, but we have some concerns we want to talk about and then how to overcome those concerns.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Yeah, thank you for the questions. And I think that's a great way to frame the conversation because if we're trying to understand the beneficial effects as well as the side effects of these medications, we need to understand how they work because that'll give us clues on the side effects of what's going on and potentially will happen and then what to do about it. So we
Hmm.
talk about GLP-1 type drugs, we're talking about Ozempic, we're talking about semaglutide, for sure. We're also talking about those are Ozempic, semaglutide goes under the name of Ozempic or Wegovy. There's
Hmm.
tirzepatide, which goes under the name Mounjaro. And
Hmm.
these are medications that are sold initially for diabetes and also for weight loss. And now there's a push to get them approved for other conditions, including cardiovascular conditions and things like that, for a variety of reasons. One is so they can sell the drug to more people, and two is because there was a law passed, the Medicare Modernization Act, and this is something that was passed in about 20 years ago. And what it said is that it was passed in 2003. And what it said is Medicare will not cover any weight loss drugs. So what the push is to get these drugs approved for conditions other than weight loss, like diabetes, like cardiovascular disease, so they can be covered by Medicare. So how do
Hmm.
these drugs work? So first of all, GLP-1
Hmm.
is a natural hormone that's produced by the gut. The difference is it's when it's produced by the gut, it has a half-life of between 1.5 and 5 minutes, which means when you make it, half of it's gone between 90 seconds and 300 seconds. So
Hmm.
it's a very short acting peptide in the body. The the difference is with the medications, with the injections, their half-life is set up so it's roughly a week, so you can inject them once a week. So it's a big difference and a big departure just there, even though a peptide that's made in the body, and a peptide is basically a combination of amino acids built together.
Hmm.
It's very different in terms of its half-life, which is going to lead into these effects. So what
Hmm.
does GLP-1 do? They One is they reduce appetite. So the first thing they do is slow down appetite. That's why the number one thing, that's one of the reasons they lead to weight loss is people eat less. Very simple. Second thing is they increase the production of insulin, which in terms lowers blood sugar. That's why they're useful for weight loss because there's often a blood sugar component to that. That's why they're very much indicated for things like diabetes as well. So they lower blood sugar by increasing insulin production from the pancreas. They also inhibit a different hormone called glucagon, which has an effect of raising blood sugar. And they reduce gastric emptying. So basically, they slow down the entire digestive system. Um,
Hmm.
and that's going to get us into a couple other side effects. So those are the four main mechanisms: slow down appetite, basically two different things to lower blood sugar, and then slow the digestive tract are the four main reasons or four main ways these drugs work.
Hmm. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And thank you for for breaking those out for us so that we can
Mm,
see, oh yeah, it's not just one thing. It doesn't just
hmm.
reduce my appetite, or it doesn't just people know they stay full longer, but
Yeah,
that's a two-pronged approach. One, it reduces appetite. Two, the food just doesn't get out of your stomach
exactly.
for a long time.
Yeah.
So that does lead to side effects, and some of them are pretty significant. Let's talk about the most common side effects we see with these types of medications.
Yeah, so this is interesting. So, um, there's different studies on how common side effects are. I mean, first of all, about 30% of people discontinue the drug within 3 months. So these can be, the side effects can be not just theoretical, but they're real, enough that a third
Mhm.
of the people are saying, let's get off it.
Yeah.
Um, different studies have shown different rates of side effects. There was one study that was actually sponsored by Novo Nordisk, which is the company that makes Ozempic, which found 96% of all participants had a side effect. So it means almost everyone. The most common ones, uh, nausea and vomiting, gastrointestinal side effects, diarrhea, constipation, vomiting are certainly there. You
Mhm.
also have some cardiovascular allergic reactions, things like that. But to get specific numbers on a couple of them,
Mhm.
there's a there's a 9x risk of pancreatitis, which is, you
Oh.
know, it can be a debilitating disease that can get you to the hospital like immediately. So you have a 900% increase in the chance of that happening. Basically between a 3.5 and 4 times risk, or between a 300 to 400% increase in bowel obstruction. So you slow down the rate of digestion so much you end up with bowel obstruction. 3.67 times risk of gastroparesis, which basically means slowing of the digestive tract. This can be things like feeling constantly full, feeling bloated, abdominal pain, heartburn, nausea, vomiting, all would fall under that headline of gastroparesis. And a
Mhm.
1.5 times risk of biliary disease. Think of gallbladder problems, most common of which should be gallstones. And
Mhm.
this and this came from a study that looked at 16 million medical records for the most common side effects of this. So this is the largest study that I'm quoting here of Ozempic side effects. So they looked at 16 million medical records to say, hey, what are actually people going to the hospital or going to their doctor for who are on these drugs? And that's what we're seeing with these numbers here.
That's an incredibly large study.
Yeah.
16 million
Yeah,
records.
60 million medical records is what they're able to look at with that one. Yeah, so it's by far the largest study on this.
Yeah. Well, and what I've seen as symptoms are exactly what you've said,
Hmm.
to the point of, some of those gastrointestinal symptoms down the further leading to food aversion, to
Yeah,
where someone's like, I truly can't eat. I don't want to eat.
yeah,
I can't eat. Food is actually disgusting to me
yeah,
because of the downstream effect of I feel so bad when I
yeah.
eat. It becomes an aversion. And that's a little troubling too, because while the goal may be weight loss, or, of course, diabetes, but we tend to see it right now. Very, it caught on fire because of the weight loss
Oh, absolutely.
and the efficacy of weight loss. But then on the other hand, we want to make sure we're preserving nutrition because, there's so many downstream effects that take place if someone is malnourished. So, what are some of the more alarming things you've seen? Well, first of all, pancreatitis is, I didn't
Yeah,
that is huge. That can be hospitalization. That can even be worse than that. I mean, it's
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
serious.
Hmm. Yeah, and other ones that are, on that same level of seriousness that maybe aren't getting that same effect or aren't that same level of notoriety.
Mhm.
And actually, before I get that, let me build on what you said, because when you talked about it's more common for weight loss now and it's got a lot of notoriety and it's become well known for that, and that is true. And some of the stats I'm giving you are for Ozempic use in general, or semaglutide, or GLP-1s in general. What's good to know is the dosage for weight loss can be up to 5 times higher than the dosage they use for diabetes. So we need to be
Really?
aware of that. The dosage for weight loss is between 0.17 and 2.4 milligrams versus half to 1 milligram for those with diabetes. So we're talking about a 70% higher dose minimum up to like a 480% higher dose. So some of these side effects come from studies they did on diabetes, which means the dosage for weight loss might even have those same numbers or even higher. Those would I'd consider those kind of minimum numbers I'd expect for the weight loss or for the side effects for people taking it for weight loss. So that's good to know. And to build on that, I think two that aren't getting as much talk, especially this first one, is the mental health connection. And I
Good.
think
I
we
want to
talked
ask you
about,
about that.
yeah, and we talked about this a little bit kind of in our setup over email, but what they found is a 45% increase in suicidal ideation among those taking Ozempic. So, I mean, that's a pretty significant, increase of, nearly 50%. And that risk of suicidal ideation goes up to 345% higher in those who are already taking an SSRI
Oh, gee.
antidepressant. So SSRI is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, commonly things like Prozac. There's a whole bunch of them on the market. But if you're on some kind of antidepressant and your doctor recommends Ozempic, you probably want to look at which type of antidepressant you're on and make sure you're aware of that side effect. Now, this is so severe that about 6 months or a year ago, the EU, the European Union, launched a probe into this risk of suicidal ideation on people taking this drug. And so I got curious of, what could be going on. Now, one of it you alluded to with the client you worked on, and it's just anybody who's taking one of these medications, it's important that you look at, hey, instead of having this much food, a certain number of calories, let's say 2,000 or 2,500, or 3 to 4 to 5 meals a day, however someone's eating, like instead of having that quantity of food, you're having half of it or a third
Mm-hmm.
of it, which means what you eat has to be, just to use round numbers, twice as nutrient dense as what you're eating otherwise, which is a major challenge. So one effect, I think, or one mechanism that would explain that 350% risk of suicidal ideation could be not getting those key vital nutrients we need for mental health. Things
Mm-hmm.
like omega-3 fatty acids, zinc, iodine, B vitamins, lithium, and protein because um, serotonin and a lot of those neurotransmitters are built from amino acids. L-tyrosine is well involved, as well as some others. So we need the building blocks. And if we don't have the building blocks, if you don't have steel and tires and rubber in the factory, you can't make a car. And if you
Mm-hmm.
don't have some of those mental health, the building blocks of a healthy brain and healthy neurotransmitters, you can't make what's needed. And I think that's part of the mechanism. The second thing is I think it's important to remember that 95% of all of our serotonin is made in the gut.
That's right.
Serotonin is what's called the feel good hormone, right? And SSRI stands for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So the theoretical mechanism of how those drugs work is based on extending the life of serotonin in the brain or in the body, and 95% of that is made in the gut. So if we have a medication that's literally pulling the emergency brake on gut health, resulting in gastroparesis, among other things, I think it's important to remember that 95% of that serotonin is made there, and that could very well be part of that mechanism leading
Mm.
to increased rates of suicidal ideation. And I have one more, but I'll take a pause there real quick if there's anything you want to add.
Yeah, well, that is fascinating, first of all, and
Mm,
great point about the building blocks for our neurotransmitters and serotonin. I was going to ask you that, and you read my mind. You went right into
mm,
here's why we're thinking that because I
yeah,
was, what's the mechanism behind that? But that, yes, that makes a lot of sense. And not only is there a drastic reduction in nutrition because people
hmm
just don't feel like eating, but you're going to eat. It's kind of like, when a woman's pregnant, if they're nauseous, I went through that with both of mine, and you
yep,
eat what you're able to eat. That's not
yeah, yeah,
necessarily an ideal diet. You're not doubling your nutrients in
yeah,
half of the food because you could be nauseous. You can feel
yeah,
yucky, and protein is the thing that is the slowest to digest and absorb anyway. So that aversion to the thing you need the most is a natural piece of this puzzle.
yeah. Abs
Mhm.
Absolutely. And we know, amino acid or protein nutrition is vital for health, and we know it's specifically affected by these type of drugs because one of the most common, I don't even know if you call it a side effect, but result of this is basically up to 40% of all the weight loss someone's having is muscle loss, is what they're
Yeah.
seeing. Two of the biggest trials, there's one called the Step 1 trial and one called the Sustain 8 trial, and they found 39 and 40% of all the weight loss was muscle. So it's lean body mass being lost. So they are losing some fat, right? There is fat loss on it. There's also muscle loss. And the worst part of that, or one negative, is not just you're losing muscle as you go on it, but typically when someone comes off the medications, they're gaining 60 to 80% of that weight back fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And what most people are gaining back isn't muscle. So somebody could lose, let's say they lose 30 pounds taking it, and they lose, 40% of that is muscle. Well, if they
Mhm.
gain 25 it back, they could end up being less metabolically healthy after they round trip, even though they weigh 5 pounds less, but actually have more fat and less muscle. So that's why, one of the things that specifically is important for someone um, on these medications is to make sure you are maximizing protein,
Mhm.
maximizing digestion so you can get the
Mhm.
best out of that protein and giving your body a signal to build muscle, or in this case, to maintain it as much as possible, because we're probably in a situation where we're talking about minimizing muscle loss, not eliminating it. But things like strength training, exercise, and good quality protein are really important ways to do that, and making sure we have that digestive fire, the ability in digestive tract, fighting against the effect of the drug to maximize digestion through that um, would be would be really important to minimize that potential side effect, or that almost almost say it's not a potential side effect, it's a guaranteed effect of it.
Mhm. Mhm. So great point. And let's just drill down a little deeper,
Yeah.
for our listeners on that. When you say, and this, guys, this is really important, what Jeff just said. We all know it's common knowledge that, GLP-1 medications in the process of weight loss, you're losing a significant amount of muscle. And
Yeah.
what Jeff was saying there was the reason that makes you more metabolically unhealthy at the end of the game is that if you lose this muscle and you regain a lot of that in fat, you've lost your ability to burn calories efficiently while you're
Mm.
resting. And so
Hmm.
that's, your basal metabolic rate. That's really when you're burning the bulk of your calories during the day.
Yeah.
So if we look at food, and we know this is not accurate anymore, calories in, calories out.
Yeah.
But if we just simplified it for conversation and said, okay, in a really simplified term, if we take in calories and then we burn them up through the day, and then we take in more the next day and we burn them up and we have this balance, then we should maintain a healthy weight. We know it. There's so much more complicated than that, but let's
Yeah.
just use it for this example. But what happens, guys, is that if you're burning the most of that, not when you're exercising. I mean, that we need to exercise, but you're burning that when you have muscle, because muscle burns calories more
Yeah.
than anything in your body. So if you lose that muscle, you learn that you lose the ability to burn calories, which means 2, 3 years down the road, you're in much worse shape than you were before
Yeah.
you started. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're just talking about muscle being incredibly metabolically active, and that's 100% true. And one of the things, I think, one of the reasons that you see most of the weight being regained fairly quickly after someone's stopping these medications. This isn't to say there's no benefit to the medication or not be a use case for it, because I think um, I'm a chiropractor, I'm a naturopath, I'm working with nutrition, so I don't prescribe medications. I would work through it a natural way, but I'm willing to see a potential use case for it, which would
Mhm.
be short term, break food cravings, kind of reset eating patterns, reset life, help take pressure off. Let's say someone has, arthritis in the knees and they can't work out or can't walk or can't move. I'm open to a short term use of it with nutritional intervention and handling the side effects to get through it. But the idea of taking this forever or long term, I think, is fraught with, you know, more, much more side effects or risks than potential benefits to it.
I agree. And this is really cool because when you came on today, I didn't know where you stood,
Yeah.
with B1 medications. And that's exactly where I stand. I've
Yeah.
definitely seen benefit in, if someone is trying all the lifestyle stuff and
Yeah.
the needle is not moving,
Yeah.
this can definitely, it takes mentally, it takes the pressure off because
Yeah.
it can be all consuming. When you're trying to
Yeah.
lose weight, I've been there. You think about it constantly and it's like, I
Yeah.
can't eat this, I can't eat that. I feel guilty because I did that. You just, I feel shame. I feel like you have all this baggage that comes with it.
Yeah.
And if you have this thing that you can just let you breathe and let you say,
Yeah.
I don't think
Hmm.
about this 24 hours a
Hmm.
day.
Yeah.
That I do think there is an application, but let's talk about because not only from a health standpoint, I agree with you. I don't believe it's sustainable
Hmm.
long term. I
Hmm.
think it's more damaging than beneficial.
Hmm.
But what can we do? So, and not only from a health standpoint, Jeff, but also financially. It gets
Sure.
to
Yeah.
the point where it becomes not sustainable, especially if people had, their insurance says we'll cover it for 6 months, but then you're on your own.
Yep.
Let's give people strategies so that,
Yeah.
listen, let's get you in the best shape ever during that time frame, whatever that may
Yeah.
be. And then let's make sure afterward you continue to have the best health ever.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. And yeah, so I'll talk about my protocol for that. One more thing I want to add in there's the most common cause of sudden vision loss um, as you get old is called non-arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy.
Wow, that's a
NAI.
mouthful.
Yeah, exactly. It's abbreviated NAION for a bunch of different reasons, including it's a total mouthful. But it's the most frequent, it's the second most form of optic neuropathy after glaucoma, and the most common cause of sudden vision loss in people over 50. Some of the research over the last 6 to 8 months is showing up to a 200% increase in sudden and irreversible vision loss, usually in one eye, in people taking Ozempic. So it's not a high number of people it happens to. We're talking about 1 to 3 people per 10,000. So it's not a high risk, but it's something to be aware of that, it's sudden irreversible blindness is what we're talking about as a potential side effect. So that's only started to come out a little bit more. And then the Novo Nordisk, the maker of Ozempic, recommends not taking it if you have any history of thyroid cancer. Um, so
Mm,
thyroid medullary carcinoma specifically. So those are a couple other of the more significant side effects that are less well known to be aware of. So, how can we do this naturally, right? And like, how can we help someone, look at the body gaining weight, poorly handling sugar, and use that as a sign to say, how do we work through this naturally, or what options do we have? And
mhm,
so, what I have is kind of a 7-step process that I work through, and I'll kind of go over those, and then we can dive into either one in more depth. But the first one is liver detoxification and support, clearing excess estrogens, balancing the hormonal system and detoxifying the liver, and of course, working on sleep. That works for a whole bunch of different reasons, including that oftentimes fat cells can act like cabinets. Like when the in-laws are coming over and you've just got to throw stuff in a cabinet or in a closet so that house looks presentable or the apartment looks presentable. That's what the body will do with toxins. It'll throw them in a fat cell. And they're
mhm,
basically away from the vital organs and out of the blood, which is basically the best place to store something that's toxic to the body. Now, the flip side of it is as someone starts to lose weight, if their liver, their kidneys, their organs of elimination generally are not up to the challenge, the body will resist losing weight or resist breaking down the fat cells because it knows it doesn't have the ability to detoxify those toxins. So that's why
mhm,
liver and gallbladder support. Um, Next, after that, I make sure we're looking at protein consumption for a whole bunch of reasons, including what you just mentioned, right? That muscle is very metabolically active. And if we
mhm,
optimize, muscle mass, and we shift the diet to more protein, we can help somebody be metabolically healthy doing that.
mhm,
After that, we kind of look at sugars, eliminating those refined sugar, refined carbohydrates for sure. Up until
mhm,
if somebody's really resistant, even removing fruit short term,
mhm,
and looking at blood sugar, hemoglobin A1C, fasting insulin, and some of the markers we'll use around that. We can look at stimulants, inflammatory foods, then build on that to thyroid, build on that deeper on blood sugar and insulin sensitivity, then look at the stress component, knowing one of the couple of reasons somebody will hold on to weight can very much be connected to stress, history of
Mhm.
stress, dysregulation of the HPA or hypothalamus, pituitary and adrenal axis, and
Mhm.
then dive in a little more on protein and fiber rich diets to help someone clear that out, or even clearing some chronic infections that are connected to it. So those are kind of an overview of the 8 steps. And basically, what we're doing with each one is looking at this as a sign. The body is holding on to weight. It's resistant to getting there. What can we learn from it? And how can we help not someone lose weight, but help someone get healthier? Because as they get healthier, their body will naturally find that ideal weight or set point.
So true. I've seen it time and time again. If you do come in from the angle of, yes, this weight is stubborn and it won't,
Yeah.
it wants to hang on there, but your
Yeah.
body is not against you, it's for you. So
Yeah.
let's figure out what your body is
Yeah.
telling you because it's telling you you need
Yeah.
something. Something's not working. I love
Yeah.
that approach,
And
Jeff.
there's
Great.
no doubt it's easier for some people than others. I mean, some people it's much more difficult to lose weight, and some people it feels like they can eat whatever or do a certain amount of exercise or not exercise and just keep a more thinner physique. So
Mm.
these are the keys I'm looking at to say, okay, when someone's having difficulty, is it a blood sugar? Is it thyroid? A lot of times stress can be an important part of that. I'm always curious when did the weight loss begin and what was going on in their life around that? Not just
Mhm.
health wise, not just diet, but moving, stress, toxicity, shocks or emotional trauma that they had in their life. And we can go into that in more depth, but that's very valuable because there's a lesson in there. Sometimes it's easy to find, sometimes it's harder to find, sometimes it's painful and takes years to find, right? But there's a
Yeah.
lesson in there for each of us to find. And I think that's the approach we're working for is how can we unlock those hidden stuck pounds, that's hidden stuck weight loss that's locked up there, and what can we learn about our body and ourselves through that process?
Yes, that is excellent. And I do want to unpack a lot of these. But first let's take a step back because I want to
Yeah,
put a neat bow on our GLP-1 medications.
yeah,
So if
yeah,
someone's coming off of them
yeah,
and say they've been mindful while they've been on them to get as much protein as they're able, to continue to strength train, to
yeah,
make good, healthy decisions because they know they can't stay on forever, right?
yeah.
But when they come off, what are your thoughts on how to do that in a way to maintain the progress they've made rather than rebound back to where
Yeah.
they came from or close to back to where they were?
Yeah, I think one thing that's important to look at is, you know, changing the idea of what we're looking for instead of weight, look at maybe waist size, how close fit, things like that, with the idea that, hey, your body was probably in a mode of starvation as you were on the drugs. That's essentially how they work. Slow down digestion, stop you from eating. So
Mm-hmm.
what we want to do is we want to get the body out of starvation, right?
Mm-hmm.
But with the understanding of maybe we're going to build back muscle and the weight's going to go up, but it could be healthy weight based on muscle. So if we have more than just total pounds, if we have a way to look at percent body fat or how clothes fit or what dress or pants they fit into or what size belt loop that is, like that would be one way I'd kind of reframe that to say as we're coming off it. The second thing I'd look at is these things are shutting down digestion. So we
Yeah.
know we got to build back digestion. So whether that's enzyme support, whether that's making sure they have optimal hydrochloric acid production, whether that's
Mhm.
working on the stress side for that, whether that's looking at, herbal bitters, things like gentian, feverfew, even wormwood, orange peel, things like that, what are natural source of bitters. And the way bitters were traditionally done is you may very well know, and your listeners may be aware, but like the idea of a salad before a meal was typically you have some arugula or something like that that's very bitter. Those taste receptors in the mouth taste the bitterness. jumpstart stomach production of acid, jumpstart enzyme production from the gallbladder and the pancreas, and get the body ready to get the most out of the meal. So one is prepare for, hey, the best case scenario is we gain some weight, but it's all or mostly muscle, and we're filling in those muscles that were maybe incomplete or starved during that time. Working on the diet, though, it's protein, fiber, healthy fat focused. So we're giving the body as nutrient dense food as we can. And then
Mhm.
three is assuring we have good digestion. And then whatever one of those side effects were there for the person as they come off it, we want to see them go away. There are some patients who are getting off GLP-1 drugs and still having those symptoms there of
Mhm.
gastroparesis or pancreatitis or muscle wasting or things like that. So we want to make sure those go away. So that would be something I monitor digestion and then working with the diet to say as we reintroduce this, how can we be as effective as possible in helping them maintain the health habits. And it's totally possible to do, but it takes work and attention on that.
Great point. What are your thoughts? I meant to ask you this a little while ago, and then we got onto something else.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts when someone is on the medication that they would improve digestion then? So, what are your thoughts on them
Yeah.
being on bitters,
Yeah.
digestive
Yeah.
enzymes, HCl, those kinds of things?
Oh, absolutely. Because I think you almost have to assume they're digestively compromised because that's
Mhm.
literally how the drugs work. So absolutely, you know, absolutely, I think that's an important thing to evaluate, to work through, and to optimize, whether it's as simple as bitters from food, apple cider vinegar, to, more intensive support depending on what's going on. I think you almost you know, nothing's ever one size fits all, but I think you have to assume they're digestively compromised until proven otherwise. And you're
Yeah.
looking at that, the symptoms you can look at are, or whatever the method of evaluation someone has, but symptoms are what someone might describe as the bloating, the gas, the indigestion, the feeling of fullness, the stuff sitting in the stomach, not quite moving, reduced frequency of bowel movements. So I think it absolutely is incredibly valid. I'm with you 100% there, at least on doing it during as well as after.
That's great. Yeah. And you just gave some really great strategies for folks coming off of the medication or looking
Mm,
to wean off at some point in the
hmm
future, because
hmm
that's scary. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
you're
yeah,
on
yeah.
it, you've reached your goals and you're like, okay, and I've learned to manage the symptoms. I've reached my goals, but now coming off is scary.
And you've
But
spent, and just add to that, and you've spent 500, 1,000, $1,200 a month for three
yeah,
months, 6 months, a year, and you've got this investment of five to $20,000 in your treatment plan, and
yeah.
and it's like, oh gosh, I don't want to lose all the benefit health wise, but also the financial investment of time that you're coming off as well. So there's that component as well.
And there's an emotional investment.
Yes.
That's big. And
Yeah.
we don't talk about that enough, the emotional
Yeah.
investment of I'm so hoping for this,
Yeah.
for the long term. So I'm hoping in this.
Yeah.
So that takes a lot. That's a lot on somebody. So the great news is that there are strategies. You're not
hmm
stuck. And some of these
hmm
strategies, they're not impossible, but to keep in mind that you want to combine them. It's not a one thing. You want to
hmm
combine getting adequate protein, fiber, digestive support, which needs to be
hmm
really intentional,
hmm
strength training. So now and I love the point that you brought out when you said, yes, your weight will probably go up. You've been in starvation mode. However, it's a body composition issue. If your weight goes up, but you still fit in your clothes really well and you're
hmm
stronger than you were, that's okay.
hmm
Let's not be so concerned with what the scale says. Let's be more concerned with how are you
Yeah.
feeling? How do your clothes fit? How's your energy? Are you happy with the way that your body works and moves and looks? And if so, don't worry about the scale. Don't get caught up on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's it. And that's not to say I have patients who have been off Ozempic for months and they've kept the weight off and they're being healthy. And, so they've
Awesome.
been able to maintain the benefit. So it's
That's
not to say it
awesome.
has to happen, but it is important to say, if somebody gains 3 to 5 pounds after getting off it and they're still fitting in to the size, you know, 4 jeans, 6 jeans, whatever that is, and they're feeling better and the waist doesn't change, but they have gained some weight, I think it's important to educate them and consider that, muscle weighs more than fat, is more dense. And some of that may be very likely is that the muscles were in a state of starvation, incomplete, torn down, and you're just getting that fullness or completeness of the body being able to repair and complete that muscle in a way it couldn't before. So it's not to say it
Mhm.
has to happen, but there is to say there's a way that the scale could go up a couple pounds, the waist doesn't change, still look good in the jeans, and the body's just as healthy or even more healthy now with those more complete and full muscles because, like you said, it's making stronger, helping stability, helping longevity. And oh, by the way, each pound of muscle, as you were saying earlier, raises your basal metabolic rate, which helps us, to use a real simple analogy, burn more calories during the day or raise the
Yeah.
metabolism as it's colloquially known.
Yes, yes. So let's talk about this is now that we put the bow on it. Now let's
Yeah.
talk about you. I love what your course does. Your course is incredibly holistic and
Yeah.
comprehensive. It's not just looking at calories in, calories out. It's
Yeah.
not just looking at exercise and diet, which people have been told for so long. They've been sold,
Yeah.
a bill of goods. They've been sold, we all have been sold a partial story. And so
Hmm.
then when we aren't successful taking partial information and running with it, then we feel like it's our fault. We've done something wrong.
Hmm.
And nothing could be further from the truth. As you talked about the different components of your course, that brings in the things that people don't often talk about, like stress and sleep and fiber. We don't even think about that. And
Hmm.
and so many other of those nuances. But let's talk about we do make our own GLP-1 and we can
Yeah.
reset that. So folks who've struggled with weight for years upon years aren't making that optimally. It's in combination with many things. It's not just that. But
Yeah.
let's talk about some of the things specifically. If someone has been toying with the idea of, do I make the jump onto a medication or is there still something I can do on my own? What are some of the, and we have to keep in mind the half-life, like you said, of our own
Yeah.
natural GLP-1 is pretty short. So what are some big rocks in the jar people can start to do every day consistently that will slowly improve their own GLP-1 production and bring it more consistently?
Good. Yeah. So basically what are the foods that naturally maximize GLP-1 production? Like
Food
how
and
can we
lifestyle. You got it.
yeah, how can we do this through diet? I say the number one thing to do it is something we've talked about with brain health and mental health, something we talked about with muscle loss, something we talked about with the importance of exercise, and that is protein,
Yeah.
specifically animal protein. So chicken,
Mhm.
fish, beef, fowl, eggs. A couple studies I looked at said liquid protein is even more beneficial for that, which makes me lean towards from a food source, bone broth.
Oh,
Theoretically, a high quality protein powder could do that as well, but I love bone broth as a food for somebody not on the drugs, but also for someone who's taking those medications as a way to get, a more easily digestible form of protein in the body. So I think bone broth can be a great option to naturally maximize GLP-1 production. Other
mhm.
things that will do that include avocado, olive oil, raw nuts will naturally do it. And vegetables will also naturally produce GLP-1 production. I think specifically because of their fiber content. So think of fiber-rich veggies such as Brussels sprouts, broccoli, carrots, cauliflower, certain leafy greens as well. Um, those are um, those are the main things to work on. A couple studies talked about high protein meals, which is what we talked about. GLP-1 levels were naturally highest after a high protein breakfast. So specifically, that can do them. One other study said protein and calcium together maximize GLP-1 release, which is why I gave bone broth as an option because you're naturally getting some protein and some calcium in that as well. So the combination of those two had a synergistic effect on GLP-1 production. And then the other thing that's written about in the research is certain amino acids, which again takes us towards protein, but specific amino acids for those of your listeners who like to geek out a little bit is glutamine, phenylalanine, arginine, and tryptophan can be those specific amino acids. But if we think just protein, amino acids, which are protein, fiber, and healthy fats. Those are our best food and dietary sources of to and mechanisms to maximize the endogenous, your body's own GLP-1 production.
Wow. Okay. So as we look at, so let's break it down again. So in summary, we're looking at high quality protein and getting sufficient amounts in at each meal. We're
Hmm.
looking at high quality fats
Hmm.
and fiber.
And
So the
fiber.
big
Yep.
things, proteins, fat, fiber. And what I like what you said about vegetables that we tend to forget about.
Hmm.
You can take a fiber supplement, and I'm a fan of that. I am.
Hmm.
I've changed my thinking on that. I used to think, oh, just get enough vegetables and fruits, but now I've changed my thinking, and that it's really tough to get the right amount of fiber every day.
Hmm.
So I do like certain supplements, and I can put links in the show notes of what I like. But what I like what you said about vegetables, not just the fiber, but also the phytonutrients.
Hmm. Oh, absolutely.
We don't know what all those do, but we know what they do. All of what they do is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
So, so like
Yeah.
the more we can get those vegetables in, and you mentioned some great cruciferous vegetables, which
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
detox,
Yeah.
which
Exactly.
if we support our detoxification capabilities, are like you said, our body's more willing to release the fat cells
Yep.
within them. It doesn't do that if it doesn't think we're detoxing well. So again, protein, good fats, great sources of fiber. And what you said about the amino acids is really interesting. As a
Mm.
gut health nerd and
Yeah.
specialist,
Sure.
when we're talking glutamine and arginine, those are our top. So if you guys,
Yeah.
if you get a complete protein, all animal proteins are complete proteins, meaning you get all the essential amino acids, which means you're getting the glutamine, the arginine, the tryptophan, the phenylalanine. Was that the fourth one
Yeah.
that you?
Yep. That was the fourth one I mentioned. Yeah. Phenylalanine.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes, but particularly glutamine and arginine are the healing, the
Yeah.
two most studied in healing.
It's a
So
good point.
isn't that interesting? So when you said
Yeah.
this too, though, that's what I think if someone has any kind of healing they need to do, whether it's gut
Sure.
healing, whether it's an older person with pressure ulcers, whether it's, from surgery, from burns, like you think glutamine and arginine. So
Yeah.
pretty interesting that those are two that have been found to also be really helpful with GLP-1.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that before you said it, but that's exactly true. And what are we talking about? We're talking about where's GLP-1 made? Well, it's made in something called the L cells of the gut, or it's made in the intestines. So the fact that glutamine and arginine are incredibly important for gut health, um, you know, totally makes sense with what you're saying. So I hadn't thought of that till just now, but I love that idea and that thing you brought there because I think that it makes even more sense, like you're saying.
It does. And
Yeah.
what's so encouraging about our conversation is that we hear these tenets of good health
Yeah.
over and over again.
Yeah.
Get enough protein, get high quality protein, get good fats, get fiber, get vegetables. And it can get kind of like ad nauseum, like
Yeah.
really, I mean, are you going to say those same things again? And do they really make a
Yeah.
difference? But they really make a
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
They are life changing.
Yeah. I'll give you one study and the course I have we'll go through all this in more depth and we'll have a copy to all the studies. So if you want to read the original research and things like that, you'll be able to see that. And if you just
Right.
want the summary and don't care about any of that, you'll get that as well. But one study that I really liked, they looked at um, let me pull up the details. So they said eat as much as you want, but we just want you to focus on foods that are either rich in protein or fiber. And what they found is after a year, the people who did it lost about 8.4 kilograms. So that would be about 20 pounds over the year. And they said the more and they said don't eat as much as you want, but they looked at the people who ate more protein dense foods, and they said at 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months they all showed significant inverse correlations with weight, which means the more protein dense food you ate, the more weight you lost. The same thing, they looked at fiber density at 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months, and all showed significant inverse correlations with weights. This was a study with 30 people, and 19 were females, and the average weight loss was 14.3 pounds over 12 months. And the key thing was no weigh-ins, no calorie counting, no food logging. It's just focus on protein and fiber-rich foods. So I think that's a study that shows real world, the theory we just talked about played out. Um, and again, no weigh-ins, no calorie counting, no restrictive diet. It's just aim for protein-rich foods, aim for fiber-rich foods. And what they found is the more fiber and protein-rich the diet was, the more the weight loss happened naturally.
Yes, that right there. I mean, that's it. So, and the beauty is it turns the diet industry on its head. You know, the
Yeah,
diet
yeah,
industry
yeah,
is a how many billion-dollar industry, and
yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
doesn't work. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work. No one's meant, like, we're not meant to calorie count. We're
Yeah,
meant to eat good food and as much until we're satisfied. And our
yeah,
body does have a point where it says that's enough. I often say, like, nobody overdoes it on grilled chicken. You
yeah,
just don't. You get sick of
yeah,
it. You're not going to eat 3 pounds of grilled chicken. That's disgusting.
yeah,
You're not,
yeah,
you
yep,
know, or salmon, or, so,
yeah,
but potato chips, that's another story. You can down a
yeah,
bag and not even think about it
yeah,
because it's not satisfying. But when your brain gets
yeah,
what it needs, which is that protein, that fiber, and
yeah,
some fats, you're good. So I love the fact that you get rid of all the counting and the watching and the
yep,
stuff that really gets under our skin, the food journaling.
yeah,
Just you can eyeball your plate and make sure minimum you want is 25 to 30 grams per meal, or that's actually a great ballpark. It's not a
yeah,
vast minimum, but
yeah,
but it's like you look at the size of your palm, or your palm, or a deck of cards, or a checkbook, somewhere in that range, and you're getting the right amount, and typically you're pretty satisfied if you get that in. And
yeah. And
then
one of the cool,
other things,
oh,
fiber.
yeah, and sorry I was just going to jump into one of the other cool things about the study, going back to what we talked about, is 85% of that weight loss was fat, right? It was less than 15% was actually muscle loss. So again, these people are losing weight, but instead of 60% of it being fat and 40% of it's muscle or lean body mass, what we saw in the sustain aid and step 3 trials, basically those Ozempic trials, what we're seeing is 85% of that was fat loss, and less than 15% of it was lean body mass. So we're definitely seeing that not only are we losing weight, but we're losing the right kind of weight to help us be healthier, and maintaining or sustaining the muscle much more than we would on a GLP-1 type drug.
Yes, yeah. And so we're maintaining muscle, so we're avoiding sarcopenia, we're
Yeah.
preventing injuries, we're improving our energy levels, we're completely reducing cravings, because cravings are rooted in blood sugar dysregulation. So
Yes.
once you get the right amount of protein and you wipe out those crappy carbs, the simple carbs, and you get your carbohydrates from veggies and some fruit at some point, now you don't get those cravings anymore, and you
Yeah.
don't get hangry, and you don't get shaky, and all those things that go with it. Tell us about, what else would you like, before we wrap up, what else would you like to highlight about your course that
You know,
people
I
would like to know?
Yeah, I think one of the last things I'll go into, which I think makes this unique, is we'll talk about some. We'll go into the stress component because I think that is one of the most overlooked stories. And I had a patient come in who was, over 300 pounds when she came in, and on the first visit, she said she wanted to lose 50 pounds over the course of the next 3 to 5 months. I actually found out she really wanted to lose 100, but it was just too big of a number for her to really confront.
Mm.
Um, and so I sat down and asked her to talk to me about the weight gain. And the reason I did that was there was a gentleman named Vincent Felitti, and he worked with Kaiser Permanente, the big HMO out in the California area. And what he found was one of the jobs he did was oversee an obesity clinic in San Diego. And that obesity clinic was designed for people who were, you know, minimum 30 pounds overweight, but really 100 to 600 pounds overweight. And what
Mhm.
he wanted to, his job was to find out why half the people were dropping out of the program. So he started interviewing the people, and what he found is everyone who was dropping out of that weight loss program in San Diego was actually losing weight. And he said, this doesn't make sense. Why would you guys be dropping out of the program if you're actually losing weight? And what he said is, and what they told him, all in their own words, but they all said the same thing is you don't understand. It's not that we don't know what to eat. It's that we're using food to handle pain, to handle loss, to handle upset. So he did a,
Mm-hmm.
so this was 286 people, this initial interviews. He partnered with a gentleman named Anda, and they interviewed 17,000 people, more than 17,000 people. And what they looked at is it was called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, and they looked at the 10 most common adverse childhood experiences or childhood trauma. Example, physical abuse, sexual abuse, incarceration of a family member, death of a family member, exposure to domestic violence, right? They listed 10, and
Mm-hmm.
then they looked at the health outcomes of people based on that. What they found is those who had an ACE score of 4, who had 4 types of that childhood trauma compared to those who had 0, had a 600% increase or 60% increase in obesity. But not just that, it was a 700% increase in alcoholism, 400% increase in chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, so COPD,
Mm-hmm.
200% increase in cancer, 400% increase in emphysema. And I think the reason this is important is how many times does somebody go in for COPD and the doctor goes, "Well, tell me about your childhood trauma," right?
Yeah,
Or,
that doesn't happen. Yeah.
exactly, or cancer or emphysema, right? But we know this is a 4x increase of the risk for some of these conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So another thing he found during those interviews is he found interviewing people who were, let's say, 200 pounds overweight. What he found is they never gained 20 pounds a year for 10 years, right? It was never this consistent linear pattern of weight gain. It always happens in jumps. He said they would gain a certain number of pounds and level out for a while, then gain a certain number of pounds and level out for a while. So anyway, this patient came in and I asked him about it. And so when did this weight gain start? And what came up was, really horrific incident of um, basically sexual assault and abuse. And so anyway, we talked through it and did some sessions working through that. And she dropped, you know, 20 pounds within about 2 weeks. And obviously some of that was physical, but almost like the emotional weight of that incident opened up to the healing. And I've
Wow.
seen that with other people that sometimes there's an emotional component, a stress component, and literally that if you unlock that what's interesting thing about stress is a term that's actually from physics, right? We
Mm.
use it to describe emotional stress, but stress and strain are physics term, meaning pressure on a system, right? We all use all kinds of physics terms to talk about this weight, heaviness, pressure, right? So I think it's an emotional, energetic, you know, intangible thing, but it can have very tangible effects on the body. And that's what that adverse childhood experience study says. It's an intangible thing, but it's having tangible effects on levels of obesity, alcoholism, even things like attempted suicide, um, using IV drugs, promiscuous behavior, with multiple sexual partners. You can see all of these things can connect from stress. So it can be an intangible thing that has a very tangible effect. There's a
Mm.
quote I like from Albert Einstein. He said, "The field is the sole governing agent of the particle." And what he's saying with that is, what we see in the body is a result of many things, including things we can't see, like stress, right? And that's a big push of quantum physics, which is basically intangible affects the tangible. But I think
Mm.
that's true for weight as well. So we'll look at thyroid, we'll look at blood sugar, we'll look at adrenal health and hypothalamus and pituitary and liver and sleep and diet and protein and fiber. And we're also going to include the intangible of this course. We're going to look at the stress component and help you identify some things around that. And then, obviously can point in directions on ways to work through some of those pieces because, um, if there was a weight gain or a jump that one of your listeners had and they can spot when it happened or what was going on just prior to that, that's a clue, right? And
Mm.
that's a clue that shouldn't be overlooked just because it's not physical or tangible or, you know, eating a pack of Oreos a day.
Yeah. Great, great information.
Yeah.
That, I had a guest on, oh, recently, maybe a month ago, and Dr. David Clark, and
Hmm.
his whole conversation was about deep stress and its
Oh,
effects
wow.
on chronic pain. And
Yeah.
stress kept
Yeah.
very often his childhood trauma, or
Hmm.
it can be
Yes.
a present or recently
Yes.
past intense stressor, uh,
Yes.
like a current domestic abuse, or even just a current really horrible job or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever. But that this deep stress is so under-recognized in our health issues, whether it
Yeah.
is weight gain and obesity, chronic pain, autoimmunity, fibromyalgia, poor, like what we look at as poor lifestyle choices, right? But those are all coping mechanisms that the
Yeah.
brain has kind of subconsciously recruited to be able to say,
Yeah.
I'm trying to get your attention and I'm
Yeah.
trying to deal with this, but I'm not able. I need some help.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think you raised a point that I didn't get to with that story of the patient that came in, but that stress wasn't childhood. And I don't think there's a difference. I don't think it's fundamental. The research I studied was childhood experiences. But if that happens when someone's 14 or 16 or 2 or 18 versus 25, I don't think there's an appreciable difference. I think it's an illustrative story, but not exclusive to childhood. Stress is stress. And there's different things about childhood that can hit us differently. But the point is, stress can happen at any point in our life and have an effect on our health. Um,
Great point. That's
yeah,
so good. Yeah.
yeah,
Jeff, this has been amazing. So how do people work with you, take your course? What all do you offer that people can seek you out for?
yeah. We have a wellness clinic. We're outside of Dallas, Texas. So they can find us at probably the easiest way is on Instagram, which is just my name, Jeff Crippen, or our website, crippenwellness.com, which is probably going to be getting updated around the time we do this. And for the course, it's called Beyond Ozempic. I'll send you a link to it and they can go ahead and take it there. And what you'll find is over 8 hours of content where we're going to dive deep into some of these areas and give you simple, actionable. We'll go through not just eating more protein and fiber, but give examples of meal plans, give examples of diets, give examples of things to try, and kind of a system to work through that you can do it yourself. Or if you're a healthcare practitioner or health coach, a series of tools that you can work through with your clients and have the handouts and the things that I'm doing with my patients in my office that you can use and work with your clients as well.
Perfect. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. So we'll have links to all of this as well as the studies that you mentioned.
Yeah.
We'll have those links in the show notes as well. Is the course all self-study? Is there
Yeah.
so it's all self-study and it's so,
Yep. Yeah.
individuals.
So we taught it live the first time, and now it's available as a self-study. And what I'll tell you is, in the course, I give you my email. So if you have any questions as you're going through that, I'll still get emails from people on the course and be happy to answer questions, and even set up a couple phone calls with people if that was an easier way to help them apply some of the material they're learning or ask some questions there. So it's all self-study, but you'll have access to my email and through that, a phone call with me if needed to help you work through it, apply it, and get the most benefit you can out of it. My interest in the course is helping you get healthy or helping you help your patients get as healthy as they can, as naturally they can, without the side effects, and maximize that incredible innate healing potential we all have, unlock it, and hit the goals and health that you have.
I love it. That's excellent. So guys, I'll have everything in the show notes. Jeff, thank you for joining us today. You bring so much to this space and so much help and wealth of information and knowledge.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. Pleasure to be here once again.
Absolutely. And guys, thanks for joining us today. I look forward to talking with you next week. Until then, stay pretty well. Bye.